Yo, what's up, guys? So, I've been working on a couple of things lately, and one of my main things is unset commander decks because I think unsets are really cool. I think if I build a couple decks, then the decks could play each other and it'll be a little bit more fun. Um, I'm not really too far into all of them, but I have this chaos one together. So the commander is Jalum Grifter. So 3 red. You put him and 2 lands you control face down in front of target opponent after revealing each card to him or her. Then rearrange the order of the 3 cards as often as you wish, keeping them on the table at all times. The opponent then chooses one of those cards. If a land is chosen, destroy target card in play. Otherwise, sacrifice Jalum Grifter. So, he's a weird kind of removal where you've got a 1 in 3 chance. Sorry, 1 in 3 chance of him being destroyed, 2/3 chance of him surviving, and then he can remove something on the board. But it's just very random, very chaosy. The deck comes out to $54, which is pretty good. Um, Moving on, we've got Tibalt the Fiend-Blooded. Definitely a chaosy card. You discard a card at random. Not a very good card, but Iron Myr is a good ramp piece. Keldon Flamesage. So it's more or less just trying to, um, like get, uh, it's trying to get cards to cast with it. Amplifire. So at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal from the top of your library until you reveal a creature. Until your next turn, its base power becomes twice that card's power, and its base toughness becomes twice that card's toughness. It's just a really random card, so I saw that it fit in. Efreet Flamepainter. You can cast an instant or sorcery from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. There are some high cost instants and sorceries in this deck that go chaosy. That's a great way to get them. High Troller, so it's 3 in a red. All targeted spells and abilities cost 2 less and have their targets chosen randomly. There we go. That's the random. Life of the party. Everybody creates one, and they have to attack each turn, and they get plus X plus O, where X is the number of creatures you control. But the tokens can't attack you, so you're safe. But everybody else is throwing around like 5/1 first strike trample hastes. They don't hit you. Red-Hot Hottie. So whenever Red-Hot Hottie deals damage to a creature, put a 3rd-degree burn counter on that creature. At the beginning of each turn, sacrifice it unless you scream "Ah!" at the top of your lungs. Just very very goofy. Rocket-powered Turbo Slug. So you may attack the turn before you play it, and then if you so let's say it's turn 3. You don't have 4 mana turn 3. So you can play it turn 3, attack with it, and then if you don't have enough mana turn 4 to cast it, you lose the game. So it's just very wacky, very random, not very good, but Wildfire Devils, at the beginning of your upkeep, choose a player at random. That player exiles an instant or sorcery from their graveyard, and you get to copy it without paying its mana cost, which is pretty good for 4 mana. Combustible Gearhulk is just ways to get cards in your hand. Etali Primal Storm is just, you're getting random cards from the deck, whatever. Infinity Elemental has infinity power. Key thing though, if we're playing this against the other decks, right, there is no way to give this thing trample in the deck. So as long as your opponent has a blocker, they don't lose. It doesn't have hexproof. It seems overpowered. However, it's your opponent's own fault if they lose, okay? There is no reason for them to be losing. Tyrant of Discord. So when it enters, target opponent chooses a permanent he or she controls and sacrifices it. If a non-land permanent is sacrificed this way, repeat the process. So basically, it's just because it's random. Soul Ring for ramp, Arcane Signet, Fire Diamond, Mind Stone, Commander Sphere. I usually don't play Commander Sphere. I just was in a weird mood building this deck. Glittering Stockpile, Chaos Confetti. So you pay 4, then you cast it for 4, pay 4, tear Chaos Confetti into pieces, throw them onto the playing area from a distance of at least 5 feet, destroy each card on play that a piece touches, remove the pieces from the game. your card store is going to have a ton of basic lands, like a basic land station. Either grab some or like we usually my friend has one in their deck for fun. We have like random decks. He'll give them like a quarter for like a handful of lands, and you just tear up a land instead. It's fine. I know. Oh, that breaks the card. It's not. That's whatever. We just don't want to keep replacing them. Lavabrink Floodgates. So Goblin Tutor, you roll a six-sided card. If you roll one, it has no effect. Otherwise, search your library for a card named Goblin Tutor. This is Commander. There is no Goblin Tutor. An enchantment, artifact, creature, instant, or sorcery. Tibalt's Trickery can counter a spell, and then an opponent gets to cast a random spell. Transcantation, whatever. Target instant or sorcery spell becomes a lightning bolt. Its controller may choose new targets for it. It's very random. Trigger happy chooses a triggered ability of target permanent. It triggers. You control that ability. What? I hear you say? It's just really weird. I'm not entirely sure how and all this card works. All right, so like if a triggered ability triggers when something happens, like Consecrated Sphinx triggers when an opponent draws a card. You draw two cards. So could you like target Consecrated Sphinx? Its ability will trigger because it says it triggers, and then you just draw two cards? I don't know. There's a lot of different abilities. Whatever. I don't know technically. Do ETB abilities count as they trigger when it enters the battlefield, or is that like completely different? I don't know. Wild Magic Surge, destroy target permanent and opponent controls. Its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a permanent card that shares a card type with that permanent. They put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. So it's kind of Chaos Warpy, kind of worse, but it's really fun. Arcbond, you choose a creature. When that creature is dealt damage this turn, it deals that much damage to each other creature and each player. Very stupid. Very, very stupid. My favorite way to play this is to kill everybody by targeting whatever creature blocks Infinity Elemental. And yes, I do own this deck. I have played it like twice now, and that's the only time I've gotten to use it. But Chaos Warp, of course, everybody knows what that does. Chef's Kiss. So you gain control of a spell that targets a single permanent or player. So like, let's say it's a Lightning Bolt. You gain control of Lightning Bolt, then you copy it, then reselect the targets at random for the spell and the copy. The new targets can't be you or permanents you control. So then you just like bolt two random things on the field. It's a little goofy. Hidetsugu's second Rite. If target player has exactly 10 life, Hidetsugu's second Rite deals 10 damage to that player. This card sucks. But I think it's really funny. So I threw it in. Glimpse tomorrow. Shuffle all permanents you own into your library. Then reveal that many cards from the top of your library. Put all non-aura permanents on. Then do the same for aura. So if you haven't noticed, this deck does not have a lot of permanents, alright? There's probably some enchantments coming up, but there's a good chance you're going to get rid of your lands and get some just out there stuff. Burning Inquiry, each player draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards at random. Of course, because it's random, gamble is random. Book Burning, so unless a player has Book Burning, deals 6 damage to them. Put the top 6 cards of target player's library into his or her graveyard. You actually kind of want to be milling in this deck because you have those creatures that can recast spells from your graveyard. Goblin Lore, draw 4, discard 3 at random. Strategy, Schmategy. So you roll a 6-sided die. On a 1, it does nothing. Destroy all artifacts, destroy all lands, deals 3 damage to each creature and each player. Each player discards their hand and draws 7 cards, or repeat this process 2 more times. This card is infuriating. The one time I did cast it, it destroyed all lands, and then I was able to recast it from the graveyard later, and it destroyed all lands. I guess I'm just really unlucky. Search for survivors. Shuffle your graveyard. An opponent chooses a card from it at random. If it's a creature card, put it into play. Otherwise, remove it from the game. Now, this is not great as is, but you have a total of 13 creatures. However, on the plus side, a lot of them are big. So hopefully you can do something with it. Yep. Next up, Wheel of Misfortune. It's just kind of random. You're discarding your hand, whatever. Pirate's Pillage is for your drawing, just helping you get through your deck. Reality Scramble. Put target permanent you own on the bottom of your library. Reveal cards to reveal a card that shares a card type with that permanent. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So, again, with the big creatures thing, most of them are above 4 mana. So you could take your Iron Myr and turn it into a Tyrant of Discord. Like, it's random, but it's pretty cool. Transmogrify exiles a creature and then gives whoever's creature that was a random creature from the top of their deck. Fervent Mastery, so you search your library for 3 cards, put them in your hand, then discard 3 cards at random. It's just gamble, but 3 times. So Licit Auction, choose target creature. Each player may bid life for control of that creature. You begin the bidding at 0, proceeding in turn order. Each player may top the highest bid. The auction ends when the highest bid stands. The high bidder loses life equal to the high bid and gains control of the creature. This can kind of get out of hand. There are a lot of strong creatures in this game, and it's a weird card. Landfill, choose a land type, remove from play all lands of that type you control. Drop those cards one at a time onto the playing area from at least 1 foot. Destroy each card in play that is completely covered by those cards. Then return to play tapped, all lands dropped this way. So it can destroy a lot of cards. The deck only plays mountains, so yeah. It's just a mass removal spell. It's a little funky. Mana Geyser can add a shit ton of mana. Plus, the deck plays a lot of high mana spells, so it's kind of necessary. Song Mad Treachery is a land. It can also gain control of a creature. Whims of the Fates. Starting with you, each player separates all permanents he or she controls into 3 piles. Then each player chooses one of his or her piles at random and sacrifices those permanents. Yeah, it's funky. Goblin Game. Each player hides at least 1 object. Then all players reveal them simultaneously. Each player loses life equal to the number of objects he or she revealed. The player who revealed the fewest objects then loses half of their life, rounded up. If 2 or more players are tied for fewest, each loses half of their life, rounded up. So this one's really confusing. I don't quite understand how and all this works. So, so you hide a small object, and then if you, I just, I don't quite understand. It's goofy. Over the top, each player reveals a number of cards from the top of their library equal to the number of non-land permanents they control, puts all permanents they revealed this way onto the battlefield, and puts the rest into their graveyard. You don't actually have a lot of permanents. Whether or not this helps you is up in the air. However, it's a very goofy card, and as you can tell, all high mana. Thieves Auction, this is what makes the game take about an hour. So you set aside all permanents, you choose one of those cards and put it into play tapped under your control. Then your opponent chooses one, puts it to play under his or her control. Repeat this process until all cards set aside this way have been chosen. So let's say everybody has 10 lands, and then 10 extra artifact, enchantment, creature, whatever permanents, right? And it's a 4-player game, so it's 80 permanents. Each player is going to go around in a circle, choosing 1 permanent from that pile and putting it onto the battlefield under their control. It's really, really weird, and it's going to take forever, but here's another one that'll take forever. Scrambleverse. For each non-land permanent, choose a player at random. Then each player gains control of each permanent for which he or she was chosen. Untap those permanents. It just more or less shuffles the entire board. Blasphemous Act. It's a classic. It's just removal, more or less. Soulfire Eruption. Choose any number of target creatures, planeswalkers, or players. For each of them, exile the top card of their library. Then exile the top card of your library. Then Soulfire Eruption deals damage equal to the converted mana cost to that permanent or player. You may play the exiled cards until the end of your next turn. So this is definitely one you're going to want to be casting for free, because 9 mana is a lot. But you're going to nuke the board and have like 20 extra spells to cast. Ricochet is starting with enchantments. Whenever any spell targets a single player, each player rolls a 6-sided die. The spell is redirected to the player or players with the lowest die roll. If 2 or more players tie for the lowest die roll, they re-roll until there is no die. No tie. Sorry. Sticky Fingers is just a funny name, and it can help you ramp a little bit. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice a creature. You look at the top of X cards of your library, where X is the creature's mana value. You may put a creature from amongst them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Random. Confusion in the ranks. Whenever an artifact, creature, or enchantment comes into play, its controller chooses target permanent another player controls that shares a type with it. Exchange control of those permanents. Just very, very goofy. Heretic's Punishment. Choose target creature or player. Then put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. Heretic's Punishment deals damage equal to the highest converted mana cost among those cards. There are a lot of high converted mana costs in the deck. It's also going to help get things in the graveyard. Possibility Storm. Whenever a player casts a spell from his or her hand, that player exiles cards from the top of his or her library until he or she exiles a card that shares a card type with it. That player may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then he or she puts all cards exiled with Possibility Storm on the bottom of his or her library in a random order. Hopefully you cast small spells, get big spell, is really what you'd hope. Yet another Aether Vortex. 3 red, all creatures have haste. Players play with the top cards of their libraries revealed. Non-instant, non-sorcery cards on top of a player's library are also counted as being under their control. It's weird. It's not going to be useful half the time because I don't think it would trigger an ETB. If it's on top of your library, I would assume it still has haste, or it doesn't have haste. Oh wait, but it gives creatures haste. Oh my god, I'm so stupid. Arcane Bombardment. So whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery each turn, choose one from your graveyard at random, then copy each exiled. Imagine, per se, you just cast, like, Burning Inquiry for turn, and then you exile, I don't know, Scrambleverse. So every time, well, the first spell you cast every turn then is also going to recast Scrambleverse. Grip of Chaos. Whenever a spell or ability is put on the stack, reselect its targets at random if it's a single target. Guild Feud. At the beginning of your upkeep, target opponent reveals the top 3 cards of his or her library. May put a creature from among them onto the battlefield, then puts the rest into his or her graveyard. You do the same with the top 3 cards of your library. If 2 creatures are put on the battlefield this way, those fight. So it's just ways to cheat stuff out, I guess. Wild Evocation. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player reveals a card at random from his or her hand. If it's a land, that player puts it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, the player casts it without paying its mana cost if able. Yeah, it's just, the whole deck's chaotic. It's not really going to help you most of the time. And of course, lands, mountains, Carekeep, Forgotten Cave, Dwarven Mine, Cryptic Caves. This deck actually won for me once out of the 2 games we played, which sounds surprising. However, it was more of like a war of attrition type of thing where I don't want to say it locked the opponent down, but they just didn't have much they could do. Try a little test hand here. Your first couple turns are not going to be great. Yeah, but the other decks that I'm building with this aren't very strong either. Like, you got Urlock, and he's fine, I guess, but let's be real, Urlock isn't very strong. This is a hat/soldier typo, because helmets count as hats, so all of these soldiers have hats. So Barone's over here. When it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control that has a hat. So he'll pump all of your soldiers, and then of course he's in white-black, so you have a lot of like ephemerate, the kind of flicker spells, so you can pump up the whole board. Of course you break the rules a little bit. You make a deck with 20 copies of Food Fight, because it just feels like it'd be a cool as random Arcane Signet card type of deck. I have a goblins deck I'm working on. Well, it's not just regular goblins. It's goblins with either funny flavor text or funny art. So the decks themselves really aren't going to be great. So it's fine that deck is slow. But yeah, so that's what it is. Maybe I'll do more decks. Yeah. All right. I'll peace.